Tonight, an in-depth look at a key part of testimony.
There was enough that his body was covered in snow.
A deep dive into the weather conditions when John O'Keefe's body was found. Plus,
I should stop being surprised by this case, but I will never stop being surprised by this case.
A popular YouTuber and lawyer is back with us to answer your questions. And
when it first came alight, and I thought something's not right.
We explore how this high-profile case has captured a worldwide audience, from exclusive interviews to expert analysis. We're bringing you the story behind the headlines.
Canton Confidential, the Karen Read murder trial starts right now.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm J.C. Monahan. Court was not in session today. It does resume tomorrow, but we're going to use tonight to explore something that has been talked about this whole trial, and that is the weather the night John O'Keefe died.
We've seen video and heard testimony about the snow that night in Canton. Witnesses who were with John O'Keefe that night have testified in general there was a light snow when the group left the Waterfall Bar and Grill and headed toward the Alberts home at 34 Fairview Road. They also testified snow had started to stick when they were leaving Fairview hours later.
As far as the snow was concerned, was the snow sticking to, or was it accumulating on the lawn as well?
I believe so.
The snow had, accumulated more.
When I walked outside, I remember, again, the snow was coming down a lot. I remember, sort of trying to watch my step because the stairs in the brick path were pretty snowy.
The timing of the weather will no doubt be key when jurors begin their deliberations. And a key question they have to consider is, should or could witnesses leaving the house have seen John O'Keefe's body in the front yard if there was snow starting to accumulate on the ground?
So far, none of the witnesses who left the house have testified that they specifically saw O'Keefe's body. This is dash cam video showing the weather conditions that morning.
It was a unique scene. There was snow. I had never processed a scene in the snow.
Do you know about how much snow was covering his body up to the mid-axle?
I'd say probably about 4 to 6 inches.
It was snowing pretty heavily. It had been snowing. We were shoveling, and it was pretty cold and windy.
So, how much snow was on the ground? How windy was it? What was the visibility like?
We've heard a lot of non-expert testimony on the weather, so tonight we're bringing in an expert.
We're joined now by meteorologist Danielle Noyes, who's also a forensic meteorologist. That is a very key difference.
Absolutely. You know, I remember on the eve of the trial talking to Pete Bouchard, and he was explaining what forensic meteorology is. All of the information was new to me. I had never heard of it before. I'm sure the same is true for our viewers. So just explain what it is, Danielle.
So it's really kind of neat. Think of me kind of as a weather expert, someone that can kind of solve a mystery here, right? So I'm going back in time, looking at the weather conditions for a specific dates, specific time of day for a specific location for a number of different reasons, and then going back and analyzing that and applying it to either legal cases, for legal teams, it could be for individuals, insurance companies, and basically saying what the weather was and how that could apply to their situation.
Which is something we desperately need at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Because we had such a random amount of description of that night. So we are talking specifically about January 28th, that night, into the early morning hours of January 29th in Canton in 2022. So we're going to toss it to you. Let's just start out. During the day, you said it was cold. It was in the 30s, but, the storm hadn't arrived, right?
I would like to say that this is typically how my reports start out, right?
Oh, really? You're going to have to decipher that for us.
When I get an inquiry, I kind of take an overview, a broad brush look, what were the general weather conditions, what were the archived weather maps, to get a general sense of what was going on leading up to the incident in question, and then I kind of do a bit of a deeper dive. So it was relatively quiet leading up to those events. Actually, the day prior, there was no reported snow on the ground. The snow depth, it was the end of January, so sometimes you figure there may already have been some snow on the ground.
Not in this case.
Not in this case. So snow officially began. I want to point out, by the way, this was a verified blizzard for southeastern Massachusetts. This was the top 6th snowiest storm for Boston, for Logan Airport, and the old public information statements from the National Weather Service, the highest total, 30.9 inches in Stoughton, which if you
Not far.
No.
Is one town over.
Right.
Okay, so now the timing becomes critical on that.
Becomes critical, and you're right about that. So I will say, in general, most of the snow fell through the day on the 29th, and I can break it down a little bit. So snow began officially, and I want to point out, too, that there were 3 sites that I looked at. So typically you hear, Logan Airport, Providence, the main kind of airports or weather observing stations. There are also additional ones that are sometimes private observing stations that are part of an observing network that they give the information out to for research purposes or data purposes. So I found a few that were right near, within a mile and a quarter of the address in question.
Oh.
And they have great data that matches up really well.
Okay, lay it on us.
So light snow began around 10:30 p.m. on the 28th.
Okay.
Light snow, 7-mile visibility, which is it's light. It's like flurries.
light.
That's
And
not
in the
that bad.
chronology, they would still be at the bar at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, midnight, 30 degrees, 29 to 30 degrees is the temperature. Interestingly, a cold front came through right around midnight that night. After that, the temperature continued to drop through the overnight, and there was a big storm center that passed south and east of Nantucket. That was what caused all of the snow and the blizzard conditions.
So midnight, this is a critical time period. This is when everybody starts to migrate over to the address in Canton. When that cold front came through, we know it brought the cold air. Is that when the intensity picked up on the snow?
So the intensity reported at Norwood Airport was just over a mile from the location to the north and northwest. Reported light snow at midnight, but the visibility had dropped to 1.25 miles. So think about it, went from 7 miles to 1.25 miles. So it had steadily picked up and had been snowing at that point. Through the overnight, it continued to be light snow with visibility around or just over 1 mile through the overnight period. I know 6 a.m. is a big time frame of question.
Sure.
Right.
The temperature at that point was about 24 degrees. So it continued to drop through the overnight. The wind, by the way, which obviously is a big concern, was gusting between 20 and 30 miles per hour. It had shifted behind that cold front, so it really whipped up through the overnight. Heavy snow was reported starting at 8:20 a.m. at the Norwood Airport right nearby.
So the intense snow was in this time frame. The intense snow really was after Mr. O'Keefe was found, was after he was getting treatment. It sounds like the weather deteriorated. When we talk about wind, any of us who have grown up here, right, you have the light, fluffy snow, and then you get wind and you can't see a thing and it blows and drifts and, you can't get out your back door, or you have the heavier wet snow that doesn't have quite the same mobility. Can you give a water count?
Yeah, so the water content, you think this wet cement type stuff that really sticks to everything, this was a fluffier event. When the snow initially started and the temperature was around 30, sure, you could say it was slightly more wet. As the temperature dropped through the 20s, it was in the teens much of the day on the 29th. It was a very fluffy snow. Okay. So the water content was much lower, a lot of air in between those kind of snow particles, so it was definitely blowing and drifting around.
The time that you're giving us, it's also interesting because this becomes a crime scene, and they do have to process that scene. And It sounds like the heavier snow actually fell at the time that they're supposed to be working the crime scene.
Absolutely, exactly. Do you know how much snow in that area by 6 or 8 a.m. was it reported?
That's interesting because obviously there had been about 8 hours of snow at that point, 9 hours, but it was all light snow.
Right.
So I have a map that shows as of 7 a.m., the morning of the 29th, there was approximately 3 to 4 inches of snow on the ground. Think about the total, 30.9 inches, 3 to 4 inches on the ground that morning. So most of the snow fell after 8 a.m., the morning of the 29th on. There was about 3 to 4 on the ground, 7 a.m.
Oh, so that was
29th.
Just the start.
That was the start. The blizzard conditions, the heavy snow, the quarter-mile visibility, the near blizzard conditions in Canton, because the official definition, you need, 3 consecutive hours in a row. They had blizzard conditions in Canton in the morning of the 29th into the midday hours. This is a map, actually, of the snow reports. You see where the jackpot is.
Right, the dark reds. That's what. If that's the coastline, you just sort of make your way right up, go for the red. That's us. When it comes to testimony, Glenn, you might describe something as like, it's snowing, and I might say, well, I mean, it's snowing, but it's really not a big deal. How do you parcel out the difference? Because jurors are going to have to do that based on the testimony.
Well, just what we heard, right? A couple of them saying, oh, it was coming down, or it was heavy snow. That's where these reports, it's not like, JC, like the old forecast we make, or we're predicting what's going to happen. We are looking back and saying, This is what happened. It was reported light snow. It was reported moderate snow. It was reported heavy snow. And that can add some context, obviously, and in a very subjective, to someone, a blizzard might be great and might not be that bad. To others, it may be brutal. So I think that's where this comes in and is very important because it gives the exact temperature, wind speed, what the reports were. It's not a question. It had already happened.
Such a great point because we know you as a forecaster, but in this part of your job, you're looking at it retrospectively using real data.
Right. We're saying, okay, these are the archives. The National Weather Service, NOAA, has these archives of data that you kind of have to know where to look to find the information. But when you do, and when you find several areas that are right around the site in question that all have data that seems to conclusively say this is what it was, there's not much wiggle room. It's the weather, and this is what happened.
Danielle Noyes, forensic meteorologist. We needed you about 5 weeks ago. Thank you so much.
That was fascinating.
It was fantastic. We could have talked forever.
All right, the Karen Read trial has captivated people near and far for months now. But would you travel thousands of miles to experience this trial?
Some people have, and you'll hear from them next.
It's been all eyes on the Karen Read murder trial. You've all been watching. The high-profile case has been capturing an audience from around the world.
Our Kirsten Glavin joins us live at Norfolk Superior Court with more on the kind of impact that we're seeing from this, Kirsten.
Yeah, that's right. We've seen people from all over come here to Dedham to witness this trial for themselves. And for some, Karen Read has become a bit of a celebrity of sorts. Flying in from across the pond and wearing pink.
This just says it all, though. We've come all the way from England, folks, and we really mean it.
This couple from Manchester, England, spending their American holiday in Dedham for a chance to support Karen Read in her murder trial.
When it first came alight, and I thought something's not right, something just does not feel right.
We're angry. We're angry with what we're seeing happening, and we can't believe that you guys are putting up with it.
The duo saying they first heard about the case over a year ago on YouTube. After watching several weeks of recent testimony, they booked flights last week.
These guys came from England.
This cell phone video on Monday capturing the moment they hugged their idol.
Thank you. It's just amazing to meet Karen, her family, see her in the flesh.
And they're not the only ones who've been going the extra mile. Rallies drawing crowds with some driving in from different states.
I take back roads, so it takes me about 27 hours.
Like Mark Dufour from Panama City Beach in Florida.
I need to have my boots on the ground doing this, and it makes me feel incredible.
And while the majority demonstrating are in support of what they call the Free Karen Read movement, not everyone has joined in.
How does it feel to be known as a cop killer, Karen?
This YouTuber from Florida showing up to both Read's trial and to a court hearing for Aidan Carney, the controversial blogger known as Turtle Boy, who has written about the case.
What this guy did to the O'Keefe family, Aidan a.k.a. Turtle Boy, is shameful, disgusting, and despicable.
No matter the view, criminologists attesting to the fact that this high-profile case is now capturing an audience from around the world.
These stories are compelling not only here in the United States, but worldwide. So does it surprise me? No. Is it relatively rare? Yes. But there are these type of stories that just catch fire and seem to be so compelling and must-see TV for many, many people.
Now, that criminologist you just heard from there added that in such high-profile cases like this, it is easy to forget what's most important. And in this case, he says that's justice for John O'Keefe and his loved ones. Glenn, JC.
Kirsten Glavin at the courthouse once again. Thank you.
When we come back, we'll be joined by one of the most streamed lawyers on YouTube, Emily D. Baker.
She'll help us answer some of your legal questions. That's next.
The rest of the solo cups are left at Canton PD, but no DNA testing was done.
Emily D. Baker has been live streaming the trial and sharing her pithy insights
oh, well, that was the victims.
with tens of thousands of viewers on YouTube. She's been watching every moment of testimony.
Yeah, she joins us now in Canton Confidential. Emily, thank you so much for being here. I love your frustration, only in the sense that I think a lot of people feel it. The last time we had you on, we asked you what you thought the prosecution had accomplished so far. That witness with the red Solo cups, who was a forensic scientist talking about it, testified yesterday, called by the prosecution. But who do you think it was stronger for, prosecution or defense?
I don't know if the jury had many takeaways other than stuff in this investigation that seems like it would naturally be done wasn't being done, including if you're swabbing one of 6 cups, how are you only swabbing one of 6? Why aren't you swabbing each of them? And if they're swabbed, why aren't they being tested? So in the fact that it just raised more questions, that is a net positive for the defense because they're in the business of poking holes in the prosecution's case and raising questions. At this point, we would expect to see the prosecution closing some of those holes and answering some of those questions. And I can't believe that they didn't even bother to test it.
Emily, we've been watching the prosecutor here, Adam Lally, fly solo. My expectation as a layman is that in a high-profile case, someone charged with murder, he'd have a lot of help, and maybe even other people will be taking some of the testimony as the trial goes forward. But we haven't seen that here. Is that surprising you? Should we expect to see that?
We've seen it on the defense. There are 3 lawyers sitting right there.
Absolutely. And he does seem to have others at counsel table with him who seem to be handling the tech and the exhibits. But yes, taking on every witness, and he's called more witnesses than most cases that have ever been tried at this point, it seems. We are over 50 witnesses in, that he is doing every single witness. And if we get to the defense case and he's doing all the cross-examinations, he has to be exhausted. I'm surprised there isn't a co-counsel taking on some of these witnesses, especially some of the witnesses who are giving scientific testimony that isn't really in controversy.
Him going it alone, does it make it more susceptible to errors or mistakes or missed opportunities?
I think it means that the prosecutor's not sleeping very much, but they don't have a lot of support. And there's times, especially now that the judge is getting seemingly frustrated with how slowly the prosecution's case in chief is going, that puts quite a lot of pressure on him. And it sometimes can lead to things not getting followed up on redirect because there's no one else there to help. I am surprised in such a long case, high profile or not, that there isn't co-counsel stepping up to help with some of that. Because again, high profile or not, 8 weeks is a very long prosecution.
Without question. Emily D. Baker, we love it when you tune in. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your insight, of course.
Coming up next, our courtroom insider, Sue O'Connell, is back with us right after this break. We're joined now by our courtroom insider, Sue O'Connell. Sue, we got a bunch of new viewer questions last night. JC is going to tell you about one of them.
All right, so this is Paul, and he writes, in the initial stages of the trial, Attorney Yannetti always opened his cross-examination by confirming with each witness that they had never met him before. I noticed he stopped doing that after about a week. Was there a strategy for that? And then why did he stop doing it? In case there's a little confusion, let's just take a little listen, and then, Sue, you can talk about it on the other side.
Mr. Kelly, you and I have never met before, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Roberts, you and I have never met, correct?
Correct.
Sir, you and I have never met, correct?
No.
Okay, Sue.
Yeah, I'm going to guess as a communications expert with a degree in communication that one of the reasons Yannetti is doing that is those witnesses were part of the group that knew each other, and he was making a point that they should have recused themselves from the investigation. Remember, that was at the very beginning of the trial. And so he was demonstrating to the jury how easy it would be to say, okay, JC, do we know each other? Well, we do. Then I'm going to disclose it to the jury, and maybe I shouldn't be the one questioning you. And that was a modeling behavior. So without telling people, this is what you should do. Like, we all have to fill out forms, right, every year. Disclosures to who we know, and so we don't report on stories that would be biased, and we disclose things on air when it's appropriate.
Yes.
That was him modeling behavior for the jury and communicating to them. That's what these people should have done. My guess.
All right.
All right. Well, that's in line.
After watching Kirsten's reporting tonight, I've been dying to ask you whether or not you're surprised to see people coming from Manchester, England, and driving 27 hours from Florida.
I am.
In this trial. This is insane to me, at least in what my reaction would be to a riveting trial.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I understand the camaraderie and the togetherness. And I know what's missing here from this, of course, is the O'Keefe family and the support for the O'Keefe. Because regardless of what happened, John O'Keefe tragically died, right? And he didn't do anything. He's not on trial. His family's not on trial. But at the same time, they are in this grief. And those who would support them, like the judge said, you can't wear police uniforms in the courtroom. So there's no visible display
for support for the O'Keefe family, but that's there as well, I think. But, you know, people love a spectacle. They always have. It's in our DNA. So I just think it is what it is.
And I wonder from you guys whether we're in a situation where the most vocal and visible is actually the minority.
Always. It might be.
I was just going to say, yeah, they've made themselves known. That's for sure.
Yep.
Well, if you have a question for our experts, please send it to us on email at canton.confidential@nbcuni.com.
We'll be right back here at 7 o'clock every night this week. Testimony resumes tomorrow. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm JC Monahan. Have a great night.